Hey guys, if you're joining, um, thanks for uh, coming to the talk. I'm just going to wait a little bit, see if we get some more people to join before I get started. So thanks for your patience. Okay, it's a little bit after 5. We can probably get started. When people join, they can catch as catch can. They can just catch up with us. Let's get started. Thanks for coming, everybody. I'm very happy to have you all join me here. I'm going to answer your questions about SAT, ACT, talk a little bit about the differences between the two tests, talk about how this COVID-19 is affecting standardized testing, which is just a small piece of US university admissions as a whole. What I'd like to encourage you to do is ask questions as we go. As a lifelong teacher, I've been a teacher for over 10 years now. I thrive on interaction with my students. So while I could sit here and talk for 40 minutes, I would really love it uh, if you guys asked questions as we went. So here's a little bit about me. I have been a teacher for 10 years. I've been doing test prep for like 7. I've taught GRE, GMAT, SAT, ACT, uh, math, and verbal. I've taught it all. So I figure I can answer any questions you guys may have regarding these standardized tests. So as you guys all know, I'm sure SAT and ACT are undergraduate admissions tests for US and some Canadian universities. Um, and one of the biggest questions I get from people is, what are the differences between these two, frankly, annoying standardized tests? They're both 3-hour-long monstrosities. Uh, the SAT is 4 sections. There's a reading and a writing. The writing section is mostly grammar. And then there's a math section, calculator and no calculator. Um, and then there's an essay, which is scored from 6 to 24. Oh, I've got a person asking a question. Rebecca is saying, when is the perfect time to start revising and studying, and how many hours per week is recommended? Great question. I usually tell students you should start studying 2 to 3 months before a given exam date, and you should always prep with an exam date in mind. So if you're going to take, for example, the August 29th SAT, you should start to prep about 2 months beforehand, 2.5 months. I usually start my classes by telling students that, like, I want them to sign a contract to come work for me part-time, and they're going to give me 10 hours of time a week, and I will not pay them. I usually tell them that, a third of the time is in lessons, is in learning. A third of the time is in reinforcement and homework. And then a third of the time is in taking diagnostic tests. You don't want to just immediately sit down and start writing SAT and ACT papers and think that, like, oh, I'm just going to improve if I take a million tests. You may improve a little bit, but you really get the greatest benefit from learning a technique or a strategy, honing that, and then practicing that strategy on full-length practice tests. And I usually tell a student that if they take a 3-hour-long practice tests, if they take a 3-hour-long practice test, they should spend 3 hours or so reviewing that test in order to get the most out of that exam. Great. Rebecca, I hope I've answered your question there. Great. So we know a little bit about these standardized tests. The ACT is very similar. One of the biggest differences is that it is an average, not the sum. So on the ACT, there's a little bit of hiding. If you a kind of a weak student in terms of one of the four topics, English, math, reading, or science, then you can kind of hide that fact because your scores are averaged. Whereas on the SAT, if you're bad at math, it's going to show. Another big question I get asked a lot is, where can I go with my particular SAT, ACT scores? I can't tell you how many students I have who think that, oh, if I get a 1200 or 1100, I can't go to university. You know, students think that either they have to go to the big name schools or bust. But I'd like them to know that, you know, you can go to some pretty great schools with any SAT or ACT score. A lot of students ask me what a good SAT score is. They think that a good SAT score is like a 1500. But the answer to this question, what is a good SAT score, is really a good SAT score gets you into the college you're applying to. A great SAT score gets you money. So if you wanted to go to, for example, Chapman University, and you had a score of a 1400, that is a fantastic score. They're going to give you so much money to come to Chapman. But if you have a 1400 and you're trying to apply to Harvard, you might not even get in. They probably won't even look at your application, let alone give you money. So another big question, should I take the SAT or the ACT? Before I talk about the exact differences between these sections, the short answer is, if a student struggles with time management, then the ACT is going to be more difficult because it is a 3-hour test with 215 questions, whereas the SAT is a 3-hour test with about 158 questions, which is a huge difference. The ACT also has a science section, and if a student is deathly afraid of science, then it's not a good recommendation that they take the ACT. Let's talk about some of the unique differences between these tests. The SAT writing and language section and the ACT English section are identical in content, but different in format, as you can see. These are my favorite sections on the test because they're just English grammar, and if you can teach a student what an independent clause is and how to use a semicolon, then you see a lot of improvement on these guys. The math sections are very different. The metaphor I like to use here is that the SAT is like swimming in a giant Olympic-sized swimming pool that's only 3 feet deep. Wait, I'm sorry. I need to collect my thoughts here. The ACT, there are so many math concepts tested on the ACT that it's like swimming in a giant Olympic-sized swimming pool that's only 3 feet deep. There's a lot of material to cover, but it's very surface level. The SAT tests comparatively fewer math concepts, but it tests them at such a deep level. You have to have such deep understanding. And you can see that's kind of reflected in how much time they give you per question. So if the ACT is a giant, shallow pool, the SAT is a very tiny yet deep pool. All right, the reading sections, you'll probably notice right off the bat just based on these numbers here. The SAT gives you 13 minutes per passage and 75 seconds per question. That's quite a lot. The ACT gives you fewer time, fewer minutes per passage, less time per question. ACT is very surface level. If you are able to get through the reading section and you're a good reader, the ACT will be no problem for you. We adults in this conversation would have no trouble reading anything on the ACT, particularly if you've been a lifelong reader. But SAT reading would give any of us a headache, a migraine, an aneurysm, a stomach ache. It is a frustrating experience. But high school students are not great readers, and they struggle equally with either the time required for the ACT or the complexity required on the SAT. I'm including the science section in this discussion because the science section is just another reading section. And you'll notice if you add up the time on ACT reading and ACT science, you get about 70 minutes, which is what the SAT requires for reading. So ACT science is not really science, it's reading. Okay, I figured I would talk a little bit about SAT subject tests because they are a question everybody asks. What are the SAT subject tests? They are 1 hour long content tests. Now, what is a content test? A content test, also known as an achievement test, is you, the student, showing that you have mastered a body of knowledge. If you have taken US history or world history, you can probably, with a little work, pass that particular subject test. The SAT and ACT are what are called reasoning tests. They don't test your ability to master a body of knowledge. While knowledge is required, they try to test for fluid intelligence rather than how well you've memorized your German verb conjugations, for example. I usually tell students that weightlifters like to lift heavy weights to show off their great muscles, and gifted students, students who are gifted academically should take SAT subject tests to show off their academic muscles. I just want to pause and reiterate, if you guys have any questions about these topics I'm talking about, just let me know as we go. Thanks. Let's keep going. SAT subject tests are weird. They are 1 hour long instead of 3 hours. There's 5 answer choices instead of 4. There's a guessing penalty, which I don't really want to talk about too much. I feel like that would be going into too much detail for the purposes of this discussion. You can take 3 SAT subject tests in one sitting, and the scores are valid for 5 years. And yeah, if you're an engineering student, by all means, take the SAT subject tests. Great, I have an anonymous question. What is the difference between the SAT subject test for Math 1 and Math 2? Should you do both if you're very strong in math? Great question. And I have an easy answer for you. No one should take the Math Level 1 subject test. The Math Level 1 subject test is a lot of Algebra 1 and Geometry 1, which is things like, area of a circle and a square and simple algebra. But Math Level 2 is very difficult. It's Algebra 2. It's things like conic sections, like ellipses and circles. It's very complicated math. It's actually way harder math than what's on the SAT and the ACT math, whereas Math Level 1 is way easier math. Because the SATs, okay, so why did I tell you not to take Math Level 1? Since the SAT subject tests are optional, schools just don't care if you take Math Level 1 because it's just so easy. The only circumstance in which you should take Math Level 1 is this year I had a swimmer, a sports student, and his university was like, you must submit 2 SAT subject test scores. And he was like, does it matter which ones? And the coach said, no, you just have to submit 2 of them. So he was like, great, I'll take Math Level 1. And I think he took a foreign language. But that was like the only circumstance. Other than that, I would not bother taking Math Level 1. Great question, anonymous attendee. Thank you. All right, so I want to answer the question that all of you are probably here to have answered, which is what is going on with COVID-19 and how is it affecting standardized tests? Well, as you all probably know, maybe you may not know this, about 12 months ago, the ACT went computer-based. They said, okay, all students are now going to take the ACT in their school's computer lab, online, and there's no paper-based testing anymore. SAT has yet to do that. They still require a paper-based test. This pandemic has forced a lot of schools to close, so standardized testing has also been tossed by the wayside. So the ACT and SAT are making a shift towards online computer-based testing at home. Now, if any of you have taken the GRE or the GMAT lately, you will know that they have been computer-based for half a decade. Now you can take the GRE, at least, I think the GMAT as well, at home from your computer at your desk. And that is definitely the direction that standardized tests like the SAT and ACT are moving in as well. The College Board, who makes the SAT, has said that if schools in the United States do not open in the fall, they will offer national students the opportunity to take the SAT at home from their home computers or tablets or smartphones. To me, that is incredible. I can't believe that they said that, because when the ACT rolled out a school-based like a computer-based exam that you took at school, even that was fraught with difficulties. I just can't imagine the logistical nightmare of having students take the SAT at home. Just to give you a sense of why I think that's crazy, the GMAT has about 300,000 test takers a year, the GRE like 600,000. But the SAT and the ACT both have about 2 million each. And you have to take those exams on a specific test date. The graduate exams are computer adaptive, so every test is different. It changes. Whereas the SAT and ACT release a set test. So security is going to be an issue. Cheating is going to be an issue. I don't know how the SAT is going to combat this, but that's what they've said. Unfortunately, for international students, this does not help us, because the computer-based exam at home is only going to be for national students. Now, the ACT has taken a more direct approach. They said they will start to offer a computer-based exam at home in the fall, no matter what. But again, it's only for national students. So it's kind of a bummer. But I'm sure it's going to come down the line for international students, just not this year. So you may have heard that some of the SAT, ACT test dates have been canceled. So here are the upcoming test dates for the fall and spring of the next school year. The SAT, as you know, was canceled for May and then June. So unfortunately, the next test that students can take is August 29th. The September 26th exam did not exist before. That is one that the College Board has added due to the coronavirus. But as you can see, the little star, they're not offering SAT subjects in September. The ACT is offering more test dates. They have not canceled the June or July test date yet. So here's hoping that the ACT will still be on for June and July of this year. As always, we offer free diagnostic tests for both SAT and ACT for students who want to get a feel for the exams, figure out which one they'd like to take. Yeah, we do group classes, we do private tutoring. So yeah, we're here to help. Do you guys have any questions at this time? I am, if you want to stick around, I will solve a couple of neat SAT math problems and show you guys a couple of strategies that I teach students in class. It just wouldn't be a presentation on the SAT and ACT if we didn't solve some math problems. So I'll get started in a couple minutes on that, but yeah, I encourage you to ask some questions. Oh, okay, cool. Someone's asking, can you recommend any good website for preparation for ACT? Khan Academy is good for SAT, but what about ACT now? Fantastic, great question. Khan Academy has a partnership with the College Board, so they have released free materials, and it's a good move. It's a move in a good direction for low income students because it's free. Kaplan partnered with ACT to develop some test materials. So I know that you can go to captest.com or just Google Kaplan ACT, and they'll have some free materials. They'll have some diagnostic tests you can take. Other than that, I'm not 100% sure if there are a lot of free materials out there for ACT. Oh, let me see. I think I might have a slide about this that I might have skipped. No, I really don't have a lot of free materials. The problem with these standardized tests is that a lot of the good stuff is behind a paywall. I know that you can download a lot of past papers for both SAT and ACT. If you just Google ACT past papers, like you can find 50 of them. I have 50. But yeah, I can't recommend a lot of free stuff. But I'm sure there's some stuff out there. Thanks for your question, anonymous attendee. I hope I have answered that for you. Okay. All right. If you guys have any more questions as they come, please do ask. What I would like to do is solve a couple sample SAT math problems. So let's give this a try. We have been doing a lot of online tutoring, so I think I'm pretty good with using this Zoom to teach. So let's get started. Let's try it. Where's my screen? Okay, so I'd like to give you guys a chance to solve this before I do. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to x squared plus 8x plus 12? Take some time, guys. Look at this problem. How could we solve it? So if you were a student in one of my classes, I would ask you, hey, what do you see in the answer choices? It starts with a V and it rhymes with variables. And students will say, aha, I see variables in the answer choices, Jeff. Why is that important? Well, when you see variables in the answer choices, you can just make numbers up. It doesn't really matter what those variables are. So let's pretend. Let's say that x is 2. Let's actually solve, or not solve, let's evaluate this expression, x squared plus 8x plus 12. Now, if x is 2, that means that this expression becomes 2 squared plus 8 times 2 plus 12. 2 squared is 4, 8 times 2 is 16, and 12 is 12. So if you add this up, what do you get? Drum roll, please. You get 32. Now I'm going to circle this because this is the answer to my question. But it's only the answer if x is 2. So now we're going to go back to the answer choices, and we're going to plug 2 in for x. So get your pen and paper ready, pull out your phone calculator, and tell me, what do we get if you plug 2 in for x? Well, answer choice A is going to give us 8 times 4 plus 4. So answer choice A is going to give us 32 plus 4, which is 36. Answer choice B is going to give us 8 times 4 plus 4 times 2. So that's going to give us 32 plus 8. But we're looking for 32. So I know that it's not A, it's not B. Let's keep going. If we plug it into answer choice C, it's going to be x plus 2, which is 6. It's going to be 6 times 6 minus 4. 6 times 6 is 36. 36 minus 4 is 32. Oh, I think we found our answer. So it's probably C. Let's just check D. Plug in 2 for x and evaluate. We're going to get 36 minus 8. Not what we're looking for. Eliminate D. The answer is C. And the crowd goes wild. So that's a very common strategy I teach students called picking numbers. Make up numbers. Pick your own numbers. And the clue here is that, oh, if you see variables in the answer choices, it doesn't matter what x is. X could be anything. So there you go. I hope that was a good introduction to what your sons and daughters go through when they have to take these terrible standardized tests. Did you guys think of any other questions while we were working on this problem? It's 5:30, so I'm going to let you guys go. But again, I'm happy to stick around and answer questions. Please let me know. Okay, guys, if you don't have any, oh wait, no, someone did ask a question. Any more slides? I don't have any more slides. At the moment, I have a lot more sample problems because I like to um, introduce students to these strategies, but nothing more, nothing really geared towards parents or fellow educators. I've kind of shared with you all the information in that regard. So I don't have any more slides. Okay, another anonymous question. Do you recommend taking both SAT and ACT and then applying with the highest score? So I would not recommend that students take both SAT and ACT, and here's why. Students are already stressed enough. The SAT and ACT are difficult tests, and it takes a lot of time and effort to prepare for one. I just feel like it's a tremendous disservice to tell a student that they have to prepare for both when they could be, starting a podcast. They could be learning to bake bread. They could be mastering a hobby of some kind. I just think that these standardized tests are given a lot of weight, and that they're given a lot of weight to students. Students think they're really important, and while they are important, it's not like they're the most important thing in your college application. What I have seen is I have seen a student prepare for the SAT, for example, and then just apply. Okay, and then taking like the ACT, like just one off, like, oh, let's just see how I do. Um, but they don't do any like active preparation for SAT as well as ACT. What I recommend is that you take a diagnostic test for each and then make a determination based on that. I hope I've answered your question, anonymous attendee. Jay de Montrichard says, okay, well, if you have more time, let's see more strategies. All right, okay. Got to give the people what they want. I will give you another strategy called solving backwards. But I'll give it to you in a minute, so just let me answer a couple more questions. Another anonymous attendee asked, oh, a very good question. Do universities tend to prefer one standardized test over the other? This is a false. All universities in the US and Canada accept both SAT and ACT with equal weight. Where did this rumor come from? Let me tell you. The state of Illinois, for example, requires that all high school students take the ACT as a high school exit exam. That means that if you're applying to a university in Illinois, like the University of Chicago, for instance, which is state universities tend to accept a lot of students from their state. So schools in Illinois will accept a lot of students from Illinois. And since all students from Illinois are required to take the ACT, it's going to look like those universities prefer the ACT, but it's just a quirk of geography. It has no actual they prefer. They don't prefer any standardized test over the other. Jay de Montrichard says, you spoke about free material, so what is the best paid material? Hale is. We're the best. We have the best material. No, in all seriousness, students can get by on free material, and if they can't get by on free material, if they need structure and if they need motivation, then those are the circumstances under which you hire a tutor or have them take a group class. To be honest, I can't give you a recommendation as to the best paid material because I have all my own material that I've developed over the past decade that I use with my students. So I would be I wouldn't be able to judge what the best paid material is. I just haven't paid for it in a long time. But I would go with the people who partner with the official test makers because they have insider access. So I would go with Khan Academy. I would go with Kaplan. Anonymous attendee says, why did you say engineers should take a subject test? Is it obligatory by universities? Okay, so the reason I say that engineers should take the subject test is because a lot of universities, for entrance to their specific College of Engineering, do want to see that you have taken SAT subject tests. It's probably one of the biggest reasons that those tests are even still around. So yeah, if you're an engineer, usually you take the physics test and the chemistry test and then the math level 2 test, because those are tests that require you to have mastered a giant body of knowledge. The math level 2 test and the physics test, they're no joke. And colleges do like to see that you have mastered that knowledge. Anonymous attendee number 2 says, what if somebody doesn't want to study in the States? Is it still recommended to take a USA standardized test as a backup? What I would do is I would make a short list of, I would make a short list of the universities to which you may apply in the US, because you might find that, oh, none of them require the standardized tests, or they're test optional or test flexible. Like they don't require that I submit them. I am really loath to recommend a student do something like prepare intensely for a standardized test that they ultimately don't need that they don't need. So I just for the student's mental well-being, I would say no. Don't make them take a standardized test if they don't have to. But yeah, make a short list of the universities and then look on the university's websites to see if they require. That's definitely the go-to answer. All right. So I have a little bit more time. Jay Montrichard wanted to see another strategy, and I will show you. This is a fun one. Well, they're all fun. To me, I think that they're all pretty fun. So my students may not think so, but all right. So let me share with you. Hold on a sec. Share my screen. Share this problem. All right. So I got 2 questions here. Tell me, let's see how quickly you can solve them. See how quickly you can solve number 1 here. Now, if you're like most students, when you see a rational equation like this, you're like, oh, well, I've got to cross multiply. Then I got to combine my like terms. Then I've got to do all this math to solve for x. But this is a standardized test. So what I tell students is take advantage of the fact that this is a multiple choice exam. Are there any answer choices you can eliminate right off the bat? What would happen if x were, for example, -1? Well, look at the right side of this equation. If x is -1, you're going to be left with 0/3. 0/3 is 0. So you're going to be left with 0 on the right side of this equation. Are you going to get 0 on the left side if you were to plug in -1 for x? You would not. The left side of your equation would be 8 divided by -2, -4. So if x were -1, then the equation above would be -4 equals 0. And that's not true. So answer choice A is out. If you plugged in B, if x were 1, then the left half of this equation would be 8 divided by 0. Now, you can't divide by 0. You're going to just break the universe, divide by 0. So clearly, can't be B. So this is great. With very little work, we have eliminated 2 answer choices. So now we just have to try one more. Let's try C. If x were equal to 4, let's see. If x were equal to 4, the left side of the equation would be 8 over 3, and the right side of the equation would be 5 over 3. 8 over 3 is not equal to 5 over 3, therefore C is not the right answer. And we're done. The answer's got to be D. We don't even have to check it. It's a standardized test. We're done. Yalla, let's move on. Number 2, how quickly can you get this? All right. Now, if you are a high school student, you're going to see this and think, oh, okay. System of equations. Great. I've got to do the substitution or the elimination. I've got to solve for x and then separately solve for y. Oh, God. It's at least a 4-step process. But it's a standardized test. Check out the answer choices. What do the answer choices represent? They represent ordered pairs. They represent x and y values. And if you look at this first equation, I know that x and y have to add up to 1. So wait a minute, let's take a look at these answer choices here. If we add up 2 and 3 in answer choice A, for example, 2 plus 3 is 5. That's not 1. If we add -2 and +3, we do get 1. Oh, so probably B. Let's add up C, 2 and -3. That's -1. And if you add up the answer choices, if you add up the x and y values in answer choice D, you get -5. So boom, we're done. The answer choice B has got to be the correct answer. And we don't have to do all of the actual math. Now, this is a strategy called solving backwards, where when the question asks you for something specific, like what is x, or what is the ordered pair that satisfies this equation, then you can plug those answer choices back into the problem and work from there. So that is my second hot tip, my second key math strategy that I teach students. And I teach this to all students, even the grad tests, the GRE and the GMAT require this. Okay. So guys, I've gone over time a little bit here, but I'm happy to do so to answer any questions you may have. But I am going to end this in about 30 seconds, unless somebody has some burning question that they just must have answered regarding standardized tests. Okay. Okay. So thanks for coming, everybody. I hope that I answered some of your questions. I hope that we had that much fun. I hope it wasn't that bad. Reach out to me if you have any questions about standardized tests. If you would like to take a free diagnostic test for SAT and ACT, I'm also happy to administer and score that for you free of charge. Okay. Then that's it. Thanks for coming, everybody. Have a lovely evening.